check with Griffin and David. Blank check with Griffin and David. Don't know what to say or to expect. All you need to know is that the name of the show is Blank Check.
You'd be killing a podcast. That's not first-degree murder. In fact, it's not murder at all. In fact, I don't know what it is.
Sure. That's what you wanted to do?
I don't know. I'm not saying it's the best line in the movie, but
I like the monologue by the bald guy at the chess place where he's kind of like, we are mediocrity, right? Where he's talking about that. That's really good. And you could do the voice and everything.
Yeah. You have my sympathies then. You have not yet learned that in this life you have to be like everyone else. The perfect podcast. No better, no worse.
Exactly. I love that. That guy's great.
Yeah.
Who's that guy?
That guy, look, I'm sure we're going to get into it, David. That guy was a true former wrestler who Kubrick met through chess circles.
Yeah, his name is, we'll talk about him.
He's exactly what that character is.
Right. It's just funny because then I also think of the Ed Wood guy, Tor Johnson, right? Who kind of is the same vibe. A Swedish guy with a bald head.
He's Tor adjacent. He's very Tor adjacent.
Right.
Look, I want to get into it. This is Blank Check with Griffin and David. I'm Griffin.
I'm David.
It's a podcast about filmographies, directors who have massive success early on in their careers and are given a series of blank checks to make whatever crazy passion projects they want. And sometimes those checks clear, and sometimes they bounce, baby. This is a mini-series on the films of Stanley Kubrick.
Heard of him?
It's called Pod's Widecast. And in many ways, I think he is a guy who kind of defines the idea in most people's minds of a blank check career, right? Because there are very few films at the beginning where he's sort of scrapping it out. And then from then on out, it is, hey, I set the terms. I work when I want to. I make exactly what I want at the exact size and budget and freedom I want. And you can go screw.
Yeah, I think I would say the only difference is he's right. He's just very unique in the control he exerted. We'll talk about this plenty.
I'm saying it's the ultimate.
It's the ultimate, right? It's the sort of the thing people would aspire to or whatever, right?
When they want a blank check career, they're going, I wish I had fucking Kubrick levels of freedom.
I guess so. What a ridiculous thing to say. Only Kubrick gets that.
Of course, but many fools aspire to it.
Right.
Look, I want to bring our guest in.
Bring him in.
He's such a professional that not only has he not spoken yet, and I don't mean to call him out for this, he's been hitting that mute button on and off whenever there's a noise that might disrupt the audio. He's trying to give us the cleanest track possible. Because this guy, he's a comedian, he's an actor, he's a writer. I think it's very important to say he joins a very, very small club in the history of blank check guests, David.
Okay.
Who are lead roles in previously covered blank check movies.
That's true. In a wonderful film, in fact.
We are speaking to the man who brought to life Remy the Rat in Ratatouille, one of our all-time favorite movies. And he's got a new movie coming out called I Love My Dad. Patton Oswalt, thank you for being on the podcast.
Guys, thank you so much. Thanks for having me on to talk about Kubrick's The Killing.
Look, there was some there was a lot of back and forth to make this happen. And in it, there was some confusion. And then there was a Hail Mary pass to throw The Killing at you because I thought I had remembered you talking about this movie in the past.
Oh, yeah. I've seen this movie many times in theaters, rewatched it yesterday morning just to be fresh. I mean, it's just a fun movie to watch in terms of, let's see how he's setting all of this up. It bears up to repeated viewings.
It does. It's not a difficult rewatch at all. Really? I've seen The Killing like 3 times, and anytime you put it on, 2 minutes in, you're just like, this is coming up.
Yeah.
This is great. The Killing. We're talking about The Killing, Griffin. Why is it called The Killing? I guess we'll talk about it. But that's maybe my only note with The Killing. I don't know if it's a great title. I mean, it's arresting, but like that's not really what's going on in this movie, right?
You could call it The Killing of a Sacred Horse.
Oh boy. Because like the book had a different a Clean Break, right? That's what it was called.
Clean Break.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a pretty good title. I guess that's not like the most thrilling title in the world.
Well, this is okay. look, we're going to crack open the dossier. JJ Birch, our researcher, put together a lot of stuff very quickly for this movie. But one of the things, Patton, I think that might be of specific interest to you, one of the working titles for this film that he pulled up, because, well, with a lot of these noir films,
they're picking names out of a hat, right?
The studios, right? That's 70% of whether you're getting a green light or not, right? Give me a title that I can slap on a poster that will sell.
The whole noir crime genre is, what are the words we can slap on a poster that'll get people to stop and come and look at it? Exactly. It doesn't even have to have anything to do with the plot. We don't care.
Right.
Let's go.
Right. So if you have a good title, they might greenlight you on that alone.
Yeah.
And if you have a bad title, they're going to make you change it 3 weeks before the movie comes out to something.
Of course they will.
Whether or not it has anything to do with the movie. Clean Break was the name of the book. But one of the working titles that apparently was close to happening for this movie, I don't know if you know this, was Bed of Fear.
Oh, my Lord. Okay. Well.
Now, Patton, one of my favorite routines of yours of all time is your extended riff on Deathbed, the bed that eats people.
Yep.
What you call, at the time, I think the worst movie you'd ever seen.
Well, no, at the time I had not seen it. I'd only heard of it because it had just come out on DVD. I have since did a screening of it at the Alamo Draft House. Like, we're all going to experience it together. It was more about the idea that it was the concept for me that a guy came up with the idea for a movie about a bed that is possessed and eats people. And he finished the script and he finished the movie. Right. And all I can think of are all of the projects I've started and either given up on, or they just didn't go anywhere. And that one made it all the way through. That is insane to me.
At no point did he crumple it up and go, stupid.
Right.
Come on.
We're doing this.
Right.
Well, it's my two favorite parts of the bit are you saying, was he either just confident the entire time, or was there the moment where the doubt hit him and he worked through it?
Either way is bad for me. Either way is very, right. It speaks badly of me and my follow through. If a guy either had 100% confidence, or like you said, had that crippling doubt, as you should have if you're working on something called Deathbed. And then he was like, no, I'm God damn it, I'm finishing this.
My single favorite detail in that, though, and not to brag, but I have spent about 15 years working on some of the worst independent films of all time, just terrible projects that never should have existed. And you go into it, post that guy writing that script, the amount of work and time and hours and sacrifice that everyone else has to commit to make that vision a reality.
Yeah.
If you're on the crew of Bed of Fear, and it's the Stanley Kubrick guy's third movie, do you think you go, this thing's going to be a piece of junk? Do you think Bed of Fear is a title that would instill doubt in a cast and crew versus The Killing, where you're just like, I don't know, it's called The Killing, whatever?
Bed of Fear. The problem with Bed of Fear is the word bed is in there.
Yeah.
And that just takes away any tension and excitement. Like,
I'm sleeping. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, bed. I should go home.
Yeah. Like sofa of terror. Like, well, no, there's a sofa. I'm taking a nap. You've taken away all the tension. You can't have bed in the title.
Bed of Fear also does not have much to do with this movie. It would also be somewhat more misleading than The Killing. This movie does at least have murder in it. Or death, at least.
And also The Killing, there's an overall, like, this is what drives all these characters, the idea of like, we're going to make a killing here. This is going to be a killing. And that is like, it's like
a double meaning.
The title is almost the motivation for all the characters right there.
You're right. I'm convinced. You're right. It's a good title. I mean, also Bed of Fear is a terrible title. So that's fine. Clean Break is fine. Clean Break is what they want to do, obviously. It's the one last job movie. They're all going to, or at least Johnny Clay is going to, he's going to make a clean break. I get it.
But Killing works on a marquee. I mean, it's sort of what we talked about with The Evil Dead, where you're just like, I can't believe no one thought to put those words in that order on a poster before. And The Killing has been used so many times since this movie as a title. It's now just one of those titles that gets recirculated. Right.
It's just nonstop. Yeah.
It is striking to just put those two words, The Killing. Tell me more.
Yeah. Yeah. Great move. Better than Bed of Fear. Oy.
I made Bed of Fear. Don't you know who I am? I directed Bed of Fear. David, I love how much this movie comes out of Kubrick's chess life in multiple ways.
Obviously chess a bit of a recurring motif for Kubrick. Obviously, it's in lots of his movies, but he's a big chess nerd, especially in his younger years. So let me see. I'm looking at some of this sort of context here. Obviously, Kubrick worked at Look magazine. That's what it called. He was a photographer, right? He'd done Fear and Desire and Killer's Kiss, which are, not features he's proud of particularly, right? Like this is probably the first movie Kubrick respects in his filmography, right?
Yeah,
I would say
right.
he talks pretty, derisively about the first two movies. I don't know what you guys think of that.
Fear and Desire, he kind of disowned as not a film for a while, and Killer's Kiss he's sort of treated as his warm-up, and this is kind of the first real film.
Yeah, Killer's Kiss is kind of cool. I like that.
It's a fun time.
Killer's Kiss
The
is
stuff
good.
with the mannequins, and it's just great imagery. I don't know what he's worried about. It works.
Also, we've covered far more amateurish first films than Fear and Desire.
Right.
I think it just speaks to Kubrick's sort of perfectionism that, like, Christopher Nolan doesn't disown Following, even though that's a rough draft movie.
Yeah.
Sure. No, 100%. But so this movie is produced by James B. Harris. Alexander Singer is a guy he knows who introduces him to Stanley Kubrick, and they set up Harris Kubrick Pictures on 57th Street in New York. Harris claims he's the one who went to a bookstore around the corner and bought Clean Break. Kubrick says the opposite.
But the thing I want to tie back in here is that Harris and Kubrick apparently really bonded over doing Washington Square Park chess. That was the 50s. Formation of their relationship. Yeah.
But Kubrick, I guess, had loved The Killer Inside Me, which is another Jim Thompson, which is a Jim Thompson book. Jim Thompson writes this movie, although he's actually only credited for the quote unquote dialogue. But so I guess like Kubrick kicks him the book and says, do you want to write a screenplay based on this? And apparently Jim Thompson had never written a screenplay before. He wrote the whole thing on legal pads, basically. And the screenplay was like, you had to like flip it topside rather than the usual left to right. So Kubrick, I guess, is the one who turns it into a screenplay, which is why he gets the credit. But what but whatever. Him and Jim Thompson are cool. Jim Thompson writes Paths of Glory. Like Jim Thompson's like a big early Kubrick guy. I've never read The Killer Inside Me. I saw the movie, the whatever from 10 years ago.
Well, there's two versions. There's the Stacy Keach version.
Yeah.
And then there's the one that came out with
Casey Affleck, right?
Oh, yeah.
Which was, it was like one of those sort of you can't believe how intense this movie is movies, right? It's so horrifying and chilling. I never saw the Stacy Keach version, and I've never read the book. I know the book is sort of a sort of crime classic, like because it's just so blistering. Have you guys read The Killer Inside Me?
I read it in high school, and I don't remember a lot of it. I just do remember it feels immediately claustrophobic. I am slammed inside of this shell of a person, and now I have to walk around with this psychopath basically for a whole novel.
That is an incredible way of describing, I think, the magic juice of most great noir of this period is just like these quick and dirty, you're just immediately slammed into an incredibly claustrophobic and bleak worldview. Yes. And it's just like a fucking kettle boiling of when is this going to pop and how do I stay in here?
Yeah, exactly.
But this book, they call up to try and get the rights. This is the one thing I forgot. And they were like, well, Frank Sinatra is like negotiating with us right now. And they were like, we'll give you $10,000 right away. So this was almost a Sinatra picture. Sinatra wanted to do this. Which,
wow.
I mean, it would probably be pretty cool. I mean, it's sort of
Dirty Harry was almost a Sinatra picture.
And wasn't Die Hard as well? Isn't that a thing?
Well, no, he plays the same. It's the same character from The Detective.
That's
in
right.
Die Hard.
Yeah,
but they never offered Die Hard to Sinatra. They did offer Dirty Harry to Sinatra when it was called Dead Right. And it was going to be Sinatra as Harry Callahan.
I need to film nerd correct you.
Oh.
He was obviously never going to do it, but something in the deal for when Sinatra had bought the rights to The Detective gave him right of first refusal on any of the follow-ups.
Wow.
So even when they set up Die Hard at Fox and had McTiernan and everything, they had to go to Sinatra and go like, obviously no, right? And he was like, yeah, no. But they did have to, before they could offer it to anyone else, say like, you don't want to play 80-year-old John McClane, do you?
Let me tell you something, baby. These knees don't work like they used to.
I just like imagining whoever the Fox exec was who was like, hey, Frank, I'm just calling so you can tell me to fuck off. Do you want to do a movie called Die Hard? He'll, fuck off. Okay, thank you. My job's done.
So Kubrick, they write the screenplay with Jim Thompson. They go to United Artists, and United Artists is like, give us an actor. Jack Palance is someone they ask. And then Sterling Hayden gets into the mix. He likes the script. They bring him aboard. Apparently, United Artists wanted Victor Mature.
Oh,
they were mad about Sterling Hayden. They were like, yeah, I agree.
No.
Not a positive. You made a icky poo poo smell face to Victor Mature. I can think of no better way to describe it.
Look, I don't hate Victor Mature. He's in one of my favorite noirs of all time. I wake up screaming, but he's not the best part of it. There's just something about Victor Mature, just for me as an actor, that is that weird little smile of his, and it just he has
like the widow's peak kind of thing. He looks like an entertainer, right? I don't know how else to describe it. Yeah.
He looks like he should be like, who's got a birthday tonight? Who's got a wedding? And like, he should be bringing on the acts. I don't buy him as a lead actor, even though he's great. And he's in Kiss of Death. He's in I Wake Up Screaming, but I just,
David Thompson called him an uninhibited creature of the naive. That's a pretty good line.
Sterling Hayden has that sort of poetry and that pathos to him.
Yeah, I mean, Sterling Hayden he's a wonderful choice, but I can see him being an unsexy one. I guess I don't know that he was the kind of star that United Artists is really. I mean, he had just been in like Johnny Guitar a couple years early. He's in Crime Wave, obviously. That's where he plays Detective Sims. Shout out to me.
God, he's so good in that.
Apparently, he was in a movie in 1955 called Top Gun.
Well,
it was a Western. So they convince United Artists, let us have Sterling Hayden. United Artists puts up about $200,000. The budget went over to about 330. So Harris had to kick in some of his own money at the end of the day.
Because that was the thing, was like United Artists said, if you can get us a star, we'll give you the budget for this. And when they come back with Sterling Hayden, they're like, we'll give you half the budget for this.
Right.
Exactly.
That's exactly how much we'll give you. There's a quote here, I like two quotes. James Harris said, I give Stanley a free hand to create and he leaves the money problems to me, right? Which I think this relationship defines Kubrick's approach to filmmaking from here on out.
Yeah.
Like Harris, for this movie and the next two, creates the dynamic that Kubrick then extends to the studios with every other picture he makes, which is just like, you got to back the fuck off.
Yeah.
And Harris sort of saw in this guy the ability, if he was given that sort of freedom, and got him used to that. The funny quote that accompanies this is Kubrick at the time saying, we want to make good movies and make them cheap. The two are not incompatible. So Kubrick's idea at this point is, I know what I do. I'm the guy who can make a movie with complete freedom as long as the budget is low. And then by the end of his relationship with Harris, he's like, but what if the budget isn't low?
Right.
I actually could do a lot more with more budget. I mean, this movie is compared. United Artists sort of compares it to Marty, which is around the same time where they're like, we can make low budget pictures that are A pictures that have like an A, picture quality, I guess is what they're trying to say. Kubrick wanted to shoot this movie himself, but union rules didn't let him do that. So he brings in Lucien Ballard. But they fought all the time, and one of the biggest things was those racetrack images that are, right at the start of the movie, and they're all. Kubrick was like, I want to go to like the horses, and I want to get some like sort of verite footage. I want to get some like documentary stuff, and Lucien Ballard is like, no, I work in like studio sets with like lights. I don't know I don't know how that works. Basically, like it's. He's trying to sort of solve a problem that the Hollywood studio system doesn't really understand, I guess.
Yeah, but there is a documentary feel to some of the early scenes. It reminds me of, a lot of Kubrick stuff like Day of the Fight and a lot of his Look magazine stuff where it looks like he either convinced Lucien or went behind Lucien's back and went down and got stuff.
He went behind his back. That is what he He gets Alexander Singer, who's the associate producer on this movie. He's one of Harris's guys who had worked shooting documentary stuff during the Korean War when he was like in the service.
Wow.
And he gives him a little IMO, I think. And says, just like, go to the tracks and shoot me some stuff. And that stuff is in the movie, which Kubrick just kind of, so that's, right. That's a sign of him kind of like, making something out of nothing.
Yep.
It is funny to me that, like, yes, he's got this background as a photojournalist, right? Fear and Desire feels very documentary-esque. And then this movie has elements of it. And you look at the Variety review from the time, and they almost lead with, like, this movie has this striking documentary style. Like, that was pretty radical at the time. And then from here on out, every successive movie, Kubrick's going to become more controlled, more creating his own ecosystem,
Right.
Like, by the time you get to Eyes Wide Shut, and he has no interest in capturing reality as it exists on the street and is building his own fake New York.
It is weird how, this guy that one of his early strengths was the documentary feel to his stuff.
Yeah.
Even in stuff like something as big as Strangelove, that feels very documentary style. And then you're right, he just goes into artifice and never looks back.
Yeah, just right. You don't think of him as like a sort of verite guy. The other thing was that Kubrick wanted to use a really wide lens, and Ballard was like, that's going to distort the image. That's going to give it this kind of fisheye thing, which Kubrick was like, yeah, that's what I want to do. Like,
yeah, dipshit.
That's a cool idea. Like, right?
Sounds fucking good.
This is a crime story. I want to get into that. And, so much of the stuff from the set of this movie is him fighting with Lucien Ballard over lens sizes and things like that. Lucien Ballard apparently at the time was married to Merle Oberon.
Wow.
So like, this is a Hollywood guy. Like, this is you look him up. He's a hottie. Lucien Ballard, he's a good-looking guy. He's got a strong brow. He worked with Joseph von Sternberg and Sam Peckinpah and all these guys. And as Singer puts it, like, Kubrick looked like a Bronx kid who was wiping his nose on his sleeve. Like, I mean, it's sort of hard to imagine baby Kubrick because I feel like the image you have of the guy is more the sort of like bespectacled, bearded older guy, right? But
well, the bearded film wizard. But right now,
sort of,
he's a nasally kid from the Bronx that's just like, I want to make movies.
Right. The dark-eyed intensity, it doesn't get there until later. He just looks like a fucking dork at this, but he looks like me.
Yeah.
They're fighting about putting a camera on a dolly track for a shot, and Stanley says, Lucien, you either move that camera and put it where it has to be to use a 25 millimeter, or you get off the set and you never come back. And Lucien, there's just silence, and then Lucien like goes and puts the camera where it's supposed to be. So whatever, he wins the big battle with the like big shot cameraman. All the other stories are just like that he's this like weird little introvert, Kubrick. Like he does not strike you as a bossy guy in any other way. But obviously the sort of perfectionist master craftsman stuff is coming up, right?
Yeah, but Kubrick could, you've seen that footage on The Shining where he's just bullying Shelley Duvall. I don't think he was ultimately I don't think he was a really good guy.
I don't think he's nice.
No. And I think he might have been like, I don't know about misanthropic, but I just don't think there's an unspoken, God, I could make these movies exactly the way I want if there wasn't all these dumb people like doing stuff. These actors who need to like go to the bathroom and eat food. It just gets in the way of what I'm trying to do.
It makes perfect sense that like AI was the thing he was working towards in his mind. Where it's like, one of these days we're going to get this fucking robot.
Robot actors.
Yeah. David.
Yep.
This episode once again brought to us by Mubi.
We love them.
Our dear friends. They're a curated streaming service showing exceptional films from around the globe. Every day Mubi premieres a new film. From iconic directors to emerging auteurs, there's always something new to discover. You know this. You've been listening to the show before. You know this. With Mubi, each and every film is hand-selected. It's like your own personal film festival, streaming anywhere, anytime. Tell us some of the things that are streaming on Mubi right now, David.
Rick Alverson's Entertainment.
Ooh.
Good movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's on there.
Alverson feels like a real Ben filmmaker.
Yeah. Have you ever seen those? The comedy?
Oh, yeah.
What's the one with Goldblum?
Why am I forgetting the name? With Ty Sheridan as well.
Yeah.
Entertainment's the Neil Hamburger one, right?
It is.
Yeah.
The Goldblum one is The Mountain. That's right. Interesting movie.
Only saw the comedy out of the other titles, but yeah, great stuff.
You're kind of good.
Heidecker, yeah. Really like weird, fucked up, kind of comedy.
Itchy the Killer. If you want to get ready for our 3-year Takeshi Miike mini series, Black Hole Thin Ice. Ooh, I'm gonna watch that. That movie fucking rocks.
What movie is that?
And that movie is hard to find. It's this movie from, I want to say 6-7 years ago, 2014.
Okay.
It won the Golden Bear at Berlin, and it's just this crazy Chinese thriller. I don't really want to spoil it too much, but it's really cool.
Well, look, David, the point is, you, our listener, can try Mubi for free for 30 days. Mubi.com/check. That's MUBI.com/check for a whole month of great cinema for free. But that's not all.
Yeah, they've also got an acclaimed audio documentary series, The Movie Podcast. It's returning this summer for its 2nd season with a focus on movie theaters. We love them. We titled Only in Theaters. The new season is going to tell you surprising stories of individual movie theaters that had a huge impact on film history, and in some cases, history in general. So you can listen to the latest season of the Movie Podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah, and they got featured guests like Barbette Schroeder, Mary Herron, Peter Strickland, Ben's favorite, Nick Broomfield, Alejandro Jodorowsky, and filmmakers like Jay Hoberman, Luminad, and our buddy Amy Nicholson. It's a great podcast. You should listen to it, and you should sign up for Mubi. Once again, you can try Mubi for free for 30 days. Mubi.com/check. That's MUBI.com/check for a whole month of great cinema for free. And the podcasts are even more free than that. But it's also just so funny to consider, like, at a certain point, even if he is still aggressive in how he gets there, at a certain point his reputation looms so large that people know what they're signing up for, right? And they understand, I'm going to totally have to defer to everything Kubrick wants. And at this point, it's like, he's never been described as someone who is, particularly insightful in knowing how to communicate with people to get what he wants outside of just demanding it. So if you're working with young, twerpy Kubrick, it's like, what are those conversations like where he's just like, fucking do it?
Yeah, but at the same time, like, there are... You're right. There was that feeling of, oh, I've signed up for a Kubrick film. It felt a lot of times it felt like people did Kubrick films more to get the story than to be in a movie. Like to go, oh, I've worked with. Let me tell you my Kubrick story. And there were some actors that weren't enchanted by him at all. Harvey Keitel famously told him to go fuck himself on the set of Eyes Wide Shut when he made him. Some people say he got fired. Some people say he just quit. But he basically, Kubrick made him walk through a door 27 times, and he just went, hey, you're fucking crazy, and just, like, left. like, did that thing. It was almost like the weird, leave it to Harvey Keitel to, like, just see through all the glamour and all the legend and go, oh, you're just fucking crazy. You're just crazy, and you lucked into making someone money, and they keep throwing money at you. But you're crazy.
Well, it's like that incredible clip of Christopher Plummer talking about working with Malick on The New World, and he's like, I memorized this monologue and you're filming a fucking bird. Like, I'm never doing this ever again. I don't care. Shoot the actor saying the thing.
Yeah.
You know?
It's, oh my God. Yeah, some of these guys, I'm just, as a working actor, I'm so over two things. I'm over the method. I hate the method, and I hate the auteur theory. Those are the two things that get in the way of people actually doing work and creating art, because the method puts 10 times more attention on the actor, whereas acting is you're supposed to just inhabit a role and not call attention to all your actorly bullshit. And then auteurism is all about, I just want to be a dick. I just want to be a dick to people, and because I have to be a tortured artist. Someone, I forgot who pointed this out. I think it was Bronson Pinchot of all people. He's like, you ever notice how whenever someone's in a method performance, they're always like, and they're acting like an asshole. Like, well, my character, I'm playing this asshole, so I got to stay in this.
They're never like, method is like a nice man who gives people candy or whatever.
Yes, what I was getting at. Yes, they never are.
Sorry, Patton.
That's quite all right.
I think, Kubrick and Daniel Day-Lewis loom too large as those two examples. And Daniel Day-Lewis, who is notoriously a very nice person and doesn't do that thing where he's like a fucking asshole to people on set just because he's playing an asshole.
Sure.
But just stays in his energy,
Right.
And I think too many people are like, well, I'm doing the Kubrick thing or the Daniel Day-Lewis thing. And it's like, first off, you're not fucking Kubrick or Daniel Day-Lewis. And by the way, everyone who works with Daniel Day-Lewis says he's nice. And everyone who works with Kubrick said he was an asshole, even if they were happy with how the movie turned out. There's a thing you said in some random interview that I always think about, Patton. That speaks to this sort of anti-method preciousness. You were on some podcast, I think, talking about movies you had seen recently, and it was when Blue Valentine came out. And you talked about how good Michelle Williams and Ryan Gosling were in that film. Yeah. And the way you described it was you said, they're just part of this great generation of young actors who just fucking crack open the script and take out their highlighter and do the work.
Yeah, they just trust that the work is going to create something amazing rather than, I want to create, this is the Ryan Gosling show, or this is the Michelle Williams biography. And no, I'm here to serve the script. And there's that, there is a generation of actors, the ones that are coming up now, I think, are really amazing in that they just, let's do the goddamn work and make it amazing. And we don't need to be precious assholes about it,
Right, and that's a movie where, like, they fucking lived in a house together for a month, improvising backstory and all this shit. But there was none of that sort of self-flagellation, like, or look at how much we suffered for this.
Self-important kind of press tour stuff afterwards, right? Where it's like, I forgot who I was, or the whole mythos that comes around it, which is the problem with the auteur stuff that you're saying, Patton, as well. It's like it becomes this mythos that just kind of makes you like gives you a license to act like a king or a god on set, I assume, right? It's like, it all flows, the buck stops here, right? So whatever I do is all part of the creative process, or what I assume is sort of the vibe.
But a lot of times it's anti-creativity because they only want everything coming from them. The idea of a collaboration, they're so worried that after the fact someone will go, well, that was my idea. As long as the movie's good, I don't care who comes up with what idea, as long as it all works. But there are so many people that are like, no, I am making a movie. The rest of you are not. All the ideas are coming from me. You have, no one contributes anything to this. And they want it to be theirs so badly. And it's like, they don't, it's the William Goldman thing. Everybody gets together and everybody makes a movie.
That's sort of, again, it's kind of from the Kubrick perspective is what's interesting about The Killing. It's like they shot this in 20 days. He's still fairly new to Hollywood. This is not the kind of thing where, obviously, yes, he wins a fight over a lens with handsome Lucian Ballard, but like he's not able to, be a petty
and on the
dictator
flip
here.
side, on the flip side, Patton, and you tweeted about this, but the Timothy Carey performance is someone doing something he absolutely does not want, that Kubrick was upset about, and Carey was fucking right.
Yeah. And it also, by the way, it shows you how great Timothy Carey is on screen, that Kubrick worked with him again after all of the tension that came out of this movie. And I remember I went to a screening of Crime Wave, this is years ago, and Andre de Toth, the director, was there and afterwards spoke. And people were, of course, asking about Tim Carey. What was Tim Carey like? So first, Andre de Toth does like a joke. And he says, well, once you took a straitjacket off, he was fine. Everyone, ha, 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 ha. And then they asked a few more questions. And then in the middle of answering another question, he just stopped and went, and let me be clear, Timothy Carey was fucking crazy. Like, just in case that joke, I don't want you thinking I was being
right. We weren't being cute.
That guy was out of his fucking mind. But
American Klaus Kinski.
Yes, exactly. But I feel like there was like a whisper network among directors going, yeah, look, Timothy Carey's going to want to make you jump off a fucking bridge, but the stuff that you get on film is so worth it. He is just amazing.
We were talking about how Coppola uses Sterling Hayden. He wanted Timothy Carey too, right? He wanted Timothy Carey to play Luca Brasi in The Godfather, which makes sense. Like, he's scary looking.
Well, okay, I'll tell you another story. I was at I hosted a editors award show, and I got to meet Martin Scorsese backstage. So all we did was trade Timothy Carey stories. And he told me, and this is what Koval told him, they brought in Timothy Carey for Godfather, for The Godfather, and then he didn't want to do it. And they brought him back. He didn't want to do The Godfather because he was shooting his own TV show called Tweets Ladies of Paradise.
Let me look to see. Yes. Tweets Ladies of Pasadena. That's what it is. Yes.
And which, by the way, one of the worst things I've ever seen in my life.
He was playing a character called Tweet Twig, apparently.
And he was he was Tweet. He wanted to make clothes for animals because he didn't think animals should be. It was his idea of what a sitcom should be. It was insane. And so he's like, I gotta make my show. I can't be in your dumb gangster movie. So then he turns it. So then for the sequel, they still want him for the sequel. So they bring him in.
Picture. Do you want to come back? Come on.
They bring him in, and he comes in with a bakery box or something like. I brought cannoli for everybody, and then he opens the box, and there's a gun in there that he filled with blanks, and he started shooting it into the ceiling, and everyone freaked out, and then he got chased off the lot by security, and he was like, "I was just trying to create some tension. It was a gangster movie. Come on, just out of his fucking mind." And it was that's why he didn't get to be in Godfather 2, because he was a lunatic.
It's also just crazy. You look at Tim Carey's whole filmography, and you have so many huge and a lot of these are uncredited too.
Yeah.
But it's you have East of Eden, and you have Minnie and Moskowitz, and Head, and Shock Treatment. Obviously, this movie, and then you have Chesty Anderson, USN. You have 2 Francis the Talking Mule movies, along with his own insane vanity projects. The birth of the highest highs and the lowest dregs of film in every genre.
Just the best. I mean, he has it. He has one of the earliest post-credit sequence in a movie in DC Cab. After the credits are done, and he gets in the cab, and it's Charles Barnett. Where to? He goes, "I'm the angel of death. Take me to hell." And he's like, "Any luggage?" It was just perfect. That's all. He just sits down, says it, done.
What was his type? Was he just crazy? Was he just the weird guy?
So he's huge. So he would play heavies. Yeah.
He is a gigantic human being, and he also has this voice. There's nothing like it. I can't describe it. He's just such a weird presence, and those weird eyes. Yeah. It looks like he's half asleep half the time.
Right. Or that he's staring through you or whatever. It's very unsettling.
Right.
But Cage is a good comparison too, because even at this point in time where film acting at large is less naturalistic, he is so expressionistic. He's just I have no interest in capturing literal human behavior. It's your tweet about it, Patton, that I found where his clenched jaw thing was sort of making him this living corpse.
Right.
It was a rigor mortis thing.
Right.
Exactly. He was, "I'm already dead, and I'm going to play this with a rictus because I'm going to die." Oh, it's so good. God.
I can imagine a director being like, "What? Don't do that. No, what? You're alive in this scene."
And because Kubrick is basing so many of these scenes around masters, deep focus masters with very limited camera movement, So you're really letting the actors control the pace of these scenes. The one scene where Sterling Hayden goes to see Tim Carey for the first time, and he's got the puppy in his hands.
Yeah.
And you're not cutting to close-up, so you really get to, in real time, watch 5 minutes of Tim Carey stroking a puppy. And you're constantly just is he about to snap this thing's neck?
No, why does he have this dog?
Oh, yeah, get that dog away from him. He just...
Yeah.
And also to do the cut from this brutal shotgunning these targets, and then we cut to he's got the gun and the puppy. What the hell am I looking at right now?
Yes.
We'll talk about him again because he was crazy when they made Paths of Glory as well, and eventually Kubrick fired him.
By the way, fired him with very good reason.
Yes,
because what a friggin' nut on that movie. I know the whole story. What a friggin' psycho.
SAG had no cause for rejection, but apparently he's also his image from The Killing is on the Sgt. Pepper cover behind George Harrison. I'm trying to find it now.
Oh, really?
Yes, but specifically from this movie. Yeah, it's pretty cool. can see on outtake photos. All right. Okay. So I may not have made the final cover, but anyway, Timothy Carey, he's great, but everyone in this is great. Not just him, right? Like there's not really a false note here.
No, every performance is so fantastic. Even, someone like Elijah Cook, who at that point had almost become like he was his own genre of person, and he finds different levels for his character that normally is outside of the Elijah Cook kind of oeuvre that just amazing. God, he's so good.
I feel like usually like post Maltese Falcon, he would play psychos, right? He would play like very creepy guys most of the time.
Yeah,
This is him more in like sort of sad, lonely, pathetic mode. Like it's sort of lateral from that. But I mean, I love him so much in the Maltese Falcon. What Marie
Windsor is the one who totally grabbed me watching this.
Yeah, those eyes and the face. I mean, it's like an early Ileana Douglas. This kind of witchy, kind of gorgeous, and also this is. I'm not saying this to be glib or dismissive, but she and Elijah Cook Jr. in this, you know what it feels like to me? Though that whole part of the movie feels like if the Safdie brothers adapted the Lockhorns comic into a movie, like it's so
just truly trying to kill each other.
Yeah, really actually trying to kill each other.
Well, there's something like she was very tall. And her career was always hamstrung.
She was too tall, sure. She was like 5'9".
Rarely having leading men that were her size.
Yeah.
And mostly needing to do performances where she was like crouching, where her ankles and knees were pulling like triple duty and shit. And this movie allows her to kind of be tall because she needs to have such sort of dominance over him physically.
Right. He has to be this weakling.
But the other thing is... Yeah. Right, this is like a stock type at this point in this type of movie. But all of these sort of one-liners she slings over her shoulder at his expense are said with genuine disdain.
Oh, yeah.
They're not just sort of like sassy lady one-liners. They're like, this woman is miserable, and she is angry at the life she's living.
Yeah, and like so miserable to the point where even her dying words are a jab at her husband. Like the last... words she's going to leave this planet with are going to be to what one last shit on this guy's head.
Right. She has to cuck him with her final breath.
I mean, I'm kind of rooting for her. Yeah.
Were husbands always saying that we're going to be rich someday in those days? Was that a thing?
I think it's American dream coming out of like sort of Great Depression.
Yeah, it's like an aspirational time. Everyone's, America's booming, right? Everyone's doing great. I mean, you were talking about that, Patton, before we started recording, how 50s noir, like America is in better shape in 50s noir than it is in 40s noir, like generally.
Yeah, but again, that makes the darkness darker because, America's in better shape and everyone's making it. So if you're not making it, something's really wrong. Yeah, you're an absolute scumbag.
But it's this thing that I like about noirs at this time is that the people who are trying to pull off these crazy, sort of moves are often just not quite smart enough to do it.
Yeah.
A little too unsavory to be able to win people over. It's what you're saying. There's something fundamentally broken in them that's preventing them from achieving the American dream.
Well, yeah, that's what I love about this movie is that, unlike a lot of crime capers, this movie is about a guy who is aspiring to pull off a multi-leveled 4D chess thing, but he is just a checker player. He is a thug. He should go into a liquor store, hit a guy with a sock full of quarters, take whatever's in the register, and just try to live on that. You are so out of your wheelhouse on this dude. It really is.
And that's what Maurice is saying to him, right? He's like, mediocrity is what you should be aspiring to here, buddy. But then again, also, I do feel like, so Johnny Clay, Sterling Hayden is the main character, and this is his one last job, right? He's going to steal $2 million. This is going to be it. Mm-hmm. He is aspiring to mediocrity in that he's like, and then I can be a normal guy, right? Like that is supposedly the brass ring he's grabbing for, right? I'll be Mr. Joe Schmo anonymous. I'll live off the money. It'll be great.
He has the same dreams as Walter Matthau and Charlie Varick of like, I got this money. I just want to go vanish and live on the low end, out of sight, and just live on the money quietly. That's all I want. Just,
The difference, though, is in a Walter Matthau movie, you genuinely believe all this guy wants is to take a nap, right? Is just to get even enough.
Matthau, yes.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas, like Sterling Hayden, you imagine the movie where he pulls this off. 18 months from now, he's going to be so impatient.
You're right. He'll ruin it down the road.
He'll ruin it. He'll absolutely ruin it. To quote back to you, my favorite things you've ever said about movies, Patton. So many of these lines just ring in my head, whether they're bits or they're off-cuff sort of things you've said in interviews. I think you were programming some series, a repertory theater or whatever, and you were presenting the original Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3.
Yes.
Do you know the line I'm about to say back to you?
I can't remember. No, what is it?
You have quoted this
I'm
line on this podcast.
I'm gonna
almost
misquote it.
certain.
I've said it on this podcast because it's the fundamental encapsulation of everything I love about Walter Matthau. You said you look at the Tony Scott remake, and the guy has to be Denzel Washington, and they can try to schlub up Denzel Washington as much as possible, but you know he's Denzel Washington.
Yeah.
And in the original film, they go, "There's only one guy who can handle this case," and the camera pans over, and he's hung over in an ill-fitting suit, eating a stale hot dog.
Yes.
And the specific of Walter Matthau eating a stale hot dog has always stuck with me.
Yeah. It's just,
he
and
was so
also
good in that
they,
movie.
they introduce him being a racist idiot. That's his introduction.
Yes.
He's being the most racist moron on the planet, and now I got to save these passengers.
Like this fucking guy.
No!
This guy looks like he can't do his own laundry. What are you talking
He
about?
barely looks like he can dress himself in that movie.
No, he
Yes.
does not look like he can dress himself. Let's be clear. He's matching like red check with a yellow tie. Someone
look
else should
good.
be making the decisions. Yes.
Yeah,
At least
yeah.
there. I mean, that's what that movie's a masterpiece. But just the idea of like there's a hostage situation. Mathau's reaction is like, oh boy, what is it? You know, like he's on the
Yeah.
phone with a guy and he's like, come on, what are you doing this for?
Well,
People
the
are
whole
late.
Movie, it's New York in the 70s. The dispatcher, the mayor, they're all like, what? Why do they want? Then let him have it. Yeah, I just want. And the mayor's just trying to watch Price is Right, and he misses the fight. He's like, I missed it. Like no one cares.
Oh god.
But the brutal poetry of Sterling Hayden is he's not smart enough to pull off a con of this size, but he's too smart to ever be happy if he were to pull it off.
Yes,
Right? He's stuck in
that's
this
a great way to
weird
think
middle
of it.
zone.
That is a great way to think of it. He will, if he pulls it off, he will be miserable in some other way down the road. You're right. He's doomed.
And I like that we know nothing about him, just that he's a vet, just that, you know, that he's been doing this for a while, right? There's no real backstory on Johnny Clay. The name is
No.
perfect. He might as well have just been like, you know, smacked out of Clay, you know, and thrown
Has
on
he
the
done
board. Yeah.
time? Has
I
he
don't
done-
know that
I
they
think they
mention it, so
I
maybe,
know. I
maybe
feel like
not.
they say he just did a 5-year bid.
And did he do the 5-year bit with Marv? Or is Marv an old prison buddy?
It's the older gentleman who runs the hotel. His son. They serve time together, and that's how he
okay,
knows,
okay.
like, and you know where to stay or whatever.
Okay.
But we're in the middle of it, which is good. Like he's already thought the heist up. It's, you know, he's got this cop, he's
yeah.
got the teller, he's got the sharpshooter, right? Like he's got the wrestler's going to do the fight. Everyone is whatever. He has laid out the chess moves in his head.
But what a chess player never considers that the pieces have lives and wants and needs of their own. In his mind, it's like the rook just does this, the knight does
Yeah, they'll
this.
do what
Like,
I
well,
want.
but in real life, they're not going to do any of that stuff.
It's actually fascinating to think about. I mean, from A, Kubrick's chess background, but B, the sort of perfectionist control he's going to exact on all his movies going forward, that it's a movie about a guy who cannot control other people's behavior, who believes that he can just, if you were able to just do everything I fucking told you to do, this would work perfectly. The vision in my head is immaculate, and you fucking people keep on messing it up with your variables.
So tragic.
Yeah.
He's such a dummy. He can't see it. He can't get out of his own way.
I think one of the most striking elements of this movie for me is the narration, which is so bizarre. The tone of it is so odd, but it does feel like so ominous from the very beginning. Like the two things it reminds me of are, it reminds me a lot of the Ricky Jay narration at the beginning of Magnolia, which you of
Yeah.
course are a part of, Patton. But that weird thing where you're seeing very banal slices of people's lives, but you understand, like, he wouldn't be telling me this if something very odd were about to happen.
Bad. He has the tone of a cautionary tale. Like there's
Yes,
this
exactly.
undercurrent of like, And here's the lesson. Pay attention. So at this
Right.
time, he thinking that he would get, you're like, oh, okay. Yeah, it has that you're right, something's about to go wrong.
It's got that newsreel quality, which obviously Kubrick has a background in, but it's like, this is this sort of like impartial narrator reporting back to you the bad thing that just happened. But when it's happening in a fictional narrative film, it's like this looming specter of these guys just working towards this like uneasy end.
Oh, it's so eerie.
Right. And I forget who does the narration in Network, but he has that same sort of vibe and the same as the Ricky Jay vibe where it's just, there's something a little too slick, a little too removed.
Lee Richardson
you know?
is the narrator.
Wow.
Such a good voice.
actor.
Really good voice.
David?
Yeah.
In our last ad read for Movie in the Movie podcast,
Yeah, sure.
I invoked the great Amy Nicholson, friend of the show, past and future guest.
Yeah, we love her.
Well, guess what?
I'm about to see her in Toronto, I hope. Yes?
That's a humble brag. Amy
Amy,
also
if you're coming to Toronto,
has
text me.
her own podcast.
What?
And if you don't already know about it, where have you been? Hide under a rock? It's called Unspooled. It's a big-ass deal.
Yep, it's hosted by friends of the show and past guests and future guests, comedian Paul Scheer.
We're talking about two close friends of this podcast.
Yes, and film critic Amy Nicholson. We love this show. I mean, it originally started with them doing the 100 movies in the AFI Top 100,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And now they're just kind of building out their own, AFI Top 100.
What should belong there.
Right. They're deciding whether or not movies should be added to the list.
They've been doing a special series right now all about heroes, exploring what makes a hero cinematically.
Right. They'll talk about things that
Superman.
that are somewhat themed,
Blade.
like in groups.
Even Paddington the Bear. But it's a great show. What are you doing if you're not listening to Unspooled?
Yeah, they recently covered our favorite blockbuster this summer,
RRR.
Rise, Revolt.
Yeah.
Wait,
or as I like to call it,
Rise, Rage, Revolt.
Revolt. What does it stand for?
I have to look.
I call it rules.
Rise,
rules.
Roar, Revolt.
Okay,
Rise, Roar,
there
Revolt.
we go. Roar's the
Right.
thing we were missing. Listen, if you love movies, and we know you do, otherwise why would you listen to us jaw about nonsense? You should listen to Unspooled with Paul Scheer and Amy Nicholson wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Now, okay, we're going to jump around to scenes, much like the movie jumps around in time. I was very intrigued, and I looked this up online, and there's discussion about it, but there's no definitive. That scene right before Sterling Hayden, he's talking to Marv, and Marv, out of nowhere, basically says, "You and I should run off together when we're done with this. You and I should go. You don't want to be in it." Like, basically, he implies, like, this marriage to Faye is going to be a mistake. You shouldn't do it. You should be with, like, is that a gay come on, or is it a you shouldn't be married? Let's just go live as bachelors. You'll be, like, is he trying to save Clay from disaster? It's a very odd scene in the middle of the movie. Like, it looks like is it a gay pass or not?
It is interesting. It is, especially since Faye is supposedly the motivation for all of this. It's
right.
Like, I'm getting married. I need to go straight. This is going to set us up. Like, so you'd think that would be a positive.
Right, but is it you wouldn't be happy with her truly, or is it you would be a piece of shit to her? Don't fucking subject her to that.
You're right in that, like, most of this movie is fairly clear cut. It's an economical movie. Like, scenes like that, and then the later scene with Maurice ruminating about mediocrity, those are scenes where you're like, there's a million different readings that I can, come up with off of this. Like, it's interesting that's, the little sort of ambiguity that Kubrick is sprinkling into a fairly straightforward heist gone wrong thing.
Maybe he's just trying to save that poor woman from being Faye Clay.
It is like not a great name.
I don't know.
It's not as bad as Victoria Mature, maybe, but it's close.
I am now going to rewatch this scene.
It's an amazing scene. It's really weird.
I mean, not to jump ahead, but like the moment where Johnny refers to Faye as his wife to airport security, and Kubrick shows you her face reacting to that. Like, they're not married yet, but he's essentially like, well, this is my, like he's presenting the sort of like, the future that they want together. Like, you feel for her. Like, she's still in it at that point. Like, she still wants that to be the result.
That luggage scene is almost the most brutal scene in the entire film.
Oh God, yeah.
Because it's long too. It's like the manager comes in, you're like, oh, this is going to turn this around, and it doesn't, and it's.
Well, also because they did that great thing. The manager's being so helpful. He goes, well, that's no problem. And you think, oh, wait a minute. So he's going to let him bring it on. He's like, we'll just cancel your flight. We'll get you. No, wait, no, that's not like, it's just.
Right. They're not being jerks. Yeah.
No.
It's such good like tonal control too, because those two actors are the only two people in this entire film who don't know they're in a noir film.
Right.
Yeah.
So their sort of friendly professionalism is so off-putting and just makes you so uncomfortable.
That's a moment where a slick, like say Sinatra, like you wouldn't buy that Sinatra wouldn't be able to talk those guys into just checking the damn bag, right?
Yeah,
or
you're right.
Carry it
Yeah,
on.
exactly. Yeah.
And like Sterling Hayden, you're like, yeah, this guy has hit his limit in terms of, being able to work the system. Or
he has
being
no
able
social
to charm
energy
someone.
left. He's got no charm. Yeah. Sinatra, you let me take this bag on, or it's ring a ding ding for the two of yous. Like there would have been something fun, or hey, Jilly, tell these guys to put my bag on the plane.
You like this hat? I'll give you this hat. Yeah.
Not only that, but Sterling Hayden would probably have an easier time if the guys were being aggressive with him.
Right.
If they were like, excuse me, sir, you cannot.
Right, because then he's big, he's scary, he's got a face like a tombstone. Like, he's
right.
Yeah, but right.
He'd give him what for.
He's not good at like, oh, Jesus Christ, can I talk to your manager or something? I just need to get the fucking bag on the plane. Like, he's
not a good Karen.
No,
he's a bad Karen.
No. And the one thing he can't deal with right now is like Edie McClurg,
What if that's in the film? If he's like, all right, so I got a wrestler, I got a corrupt cop, I got a Karen, obviously, a great Karen.
I'm going to need a Karen for the airport. I know that already.
She's getting us through all the gates. It's going to be great.
Ocean's 8 was like 3 years too early to have a Karen,
right,
yeah.
but it absolutely would have been one of the. Catherine Hahn would have played a Karen.
Oh,
if
she
that
would have
movie
been
happened
amazing.
3 years later.
Yeah.
She's just.
What do we need? We need
her phone is
a
immediately open.
forgerer,
She's like, I'm filming all of this. What's your name?
a pickpocket, a Karen.
Don't hide your badge. I want to see your name. So there are other scenes we want to get into in particular. Like, a lot of the early part of this movie is set up, and then we are just delving into the inner lives, I feel like, of all these characters.
Yeah.
Briefly.
Yeah. I mean, this movie has one of those stories I love where like they shoot it this way, they edit it this way with the sort of jumbled chronology. They test screen it. Or they show it to the studio. The studio's like, this is too fucking confusing. Edit this in the right order. They test screen it, and the audiences hate it even more when it's in the right order. So they're like, fuck you, I guess turn it back.
I mean, this must have been kind of a revolutionary thing for the time, I guess, doing stuff out of order. But, it also just shows you how not just how random life is, but how the most seemingly insignificant things are what cause the biggest disasters in real life. The little puppy getting loose, the bad marriage that leads to the guy telling his wife what's going on. Like all these little elements keep going back and forth that I think that messing around with time really puts you in that mindset of I have no control over anything, even though I'm trying to impose control. That's why I think the narrator is so ironic. He's coming back in and saying what day it is, saying what time it is. It doesn't matter. This is all going to end in disaster,
But that's how it's in Johnny Clay's head, right? He's like, this is clockwork. I've done well. Every piece is arranged. And then we're just watching slowly as we're like, well, no, he doesn't actually, like you're saying, he has no control over this, or he doesn't have enough control over this. And he's only going to get someone like Elisha Cook on board because Elisha Cook is an unstable person. Like,
right.
That's how you're going to, convince someone to join you in a scheme like this if they have their own hardship.
And jumbling it that way and having the narrator, this weird, impartial, voice up in the sky, being the one who explains it to us and dictates the order of it, kind of like turns setup into punchline. Because you're sort of filling in the blanks in your head noir style of like, okay, what's the windup of this? And when it ends up being such a kind of banal, small thing, it feels even more absurd that it's escalating to this point, or how these things are ultimately undone.
Yeah. I mean, it's also that moment when I think even Sterling Hayden, when he sees the money on the tarmac blowing away, when he goes, what's the difference? He's like, I was never, ever even close to having this thing succeed. It was all an illusion the whole time.
If I could be undone by that, if I could be undone by a fucking,
and then
like,
it's like
Right.
it's so minor. The guy doesn't even crash. He just sort of like makes a slightly hard turn, and that's it. And the suitcase is open.
yeah, slightly.
Can I just say, Marie Windsor's character, that her boyfriend is called Val Cannon. That is just a perfect name for a boyfriend who's cucking poor Elisha Hook. Vince Edwards is the actor. He's best known for The Devil's Brigade, I feel like. Yeah.
Well, also very well known for Murder by Contract, which was a huge influence on Taxi Driver. Like,
which is such a good movie.
Yeah, but all of the scenes where he's just like alone and working out in his hotel room and exercising, that's all Travis Bickle.
And like that movie, I saw that because the Criterion did that Columbia Noir collection a while ago, and I remember I watched all of those.
Yeah,
and that was one of them. And that's like, that's even later than this, like 58 or something. And that's one of those things where you're like, Jesus, this is chilling. Like, this is unsettling. Like, this doesn't feel like a lot of earlier noirs. Like, this is kind of just, like, icky, which is cool. Like, there's not much attempt to win us over.
Right.
This is, and it's in a different way for different reasons, but this is one of the noirs that feels the most modern to me, and I don't say that as it doesn't make it better or worse, even though I think this is a phenomenal film. But like, a lot of times when you're going to noir, what you're going for is the evocation of that very specific feel and the style of that moment. And something about the pacing of this movie, the sort of briskness of it, but also that the sort of disorganized narrative and all of that. And there's a modernism, I think, to the performances in this, which is probably what Kubrick was trying to push towards.
Yeah, but as you said, Griff, they edited the movie as we know it. Sterling Hayden's agent sees it and is furious. Bill Schifrin says, like, what's all this back and forth business? Just when you're getting to the robbery, you cut. You're going to irritate the audience. I'm very disappointed in you guys. So they go back and they recut it chronologically. And they were like, it sucked. Like, it had to be this way. Like, it was no good. It's just a straightforward story. Because it's a very simple story.
Oh, it's very, again, when you look back on it, Sterling Hayden's character is not a clever man. He is a jumped up liquor store robber. It's all brutality and violence. It's point A to point B. But in his mind, because I guess he made friends with a chess player, he's like, I want to do a chess move kind of thing, but he doesn't understand how this works. He doesn't get it.
Well, it's so telling that the scene with the wrestler is all about the sort of futility of this plan and like accepting the mediocrity of life. Here's the one guy who understands the chessboard, like literally and figuratively.
Yes.
And he's being recruited just as a physical muscle
literally to just
create a
punch.
distraction.
He can throw a punch though where 3 people will fall down from one punch. Like, that's, he can clear whole units essentially just by swinging his arm.
It's funny how overthought this plan is, though, that he's like, I need 2 distractions going on. I not only need a horse to get murdered, but I need a wrestler to get into a fist fight at like the fucking collection.
And also,
booth.
by the way, wouldn't a horse being shot at a race make everything that happened around that horse being shot very suspect, and they would double check everything about, like, that's you're putting so much more attention on yourself,
especially the odds-on favorite, who's like part of his whole plan is like, this horse is going to have such a commanding lead that when you shoot it, all the other horses behind are going to trip over it and knock down.
Yeah, the fight in the bar, he's drawing too much attention to it. I would not do that were I Maurice. I would decline.
No. But also, here's my other question. You're right. Maurice does have a head for chess, and he seems to understand that. But chess doesn't translate to real life. So why does he go in on this plan? And what is the letter that he wants the cashier at the chess place to deliver? If I'm not back at 6:30, is that to his son? Who is that to?
Or someone.
State. I feel like it was. I was under the assumption it was like an attorney.
It wasn't clear to me what he wants a letter, and then if you don't hear from me by 6:30, then deliver it. But if not, it was very weird.
I mean, that's right when he gives that sort of monologue about like, you've heard of the Siberian goatherd who stared at the sun and it made him blind, right? Like, I feel like his whole sort of poet lunkhead thing where he's like, look, I'm just here to clear out a bar, as a distraction. But he has some sort of Zen status about being a criminal, right? Where he's like, maybe this is my last day, or maybe, I'll be back tomorrow. But he's free of any kind of anxieties about it, at least.
I mean, he's the character I like the most. I love that character. I love that character. The fact that he's a philosopher, but he's also basically the Thing from the Fantastic Four. Like, that's just the weirdest combination for a character.
Well, especially since all of his lines are the things these monologues that are so interesting. And then when he has to start a fight, he just goes to the bar and he's like, hey, can I get some service, you Irish pig?
Yeah.
And he like swings at the bartender right away.
I would punch a hole through this wall for you, but first, may I quote from Tolstoy, who once wrote that, oh God, what the hell? Yeah.
I just also think on paper we got this like Eastern European wrestler and we're giving him these sort of brutal monologues, like these existential monologues about like the meaningness of life and accepting it, whatever. You imagine it will come off like Blazing Saddles with like Mongo just pawning Game of Life, where it's like, you can't give this guy this much dialogue. Even Ed Wood knew not to give fucking Tor Johnson soliloquies. Right. And then this guy fucking nails it. Do you know how he died?
I don't.
No.
How did he die?
He was 76 years old and he was leaving his regular chess club where he played. And he was jumped by 5 teenagers, and he decided to fight back and take them on himself.
Oh my God.
Nick probably could have handled 1 or 2 of them, but 5 were too many. Jesus Christ.
This is what his widow said after his death.
Wait a minute. So hang on. Did he die from the exertion of fighting him, or did the teenagers kill him?
He was taken to the hospital and died in the hospital. So I'm guessing
it was a combination of both.
Yeah. They did some damage.
Yeah.
And
he was 77.
77 years old, born in 1903. He was from Georgia, the one in Europe, not
Georgia.
Yeah. Yes.
They bumped into each other. Words were exchanged. Nick never took any guff from anybody, and soon he was engaged with a fight with all 5 kids at once.
Holy
I would not
crap.
him. I personally would not jump this guy.
I would look at that guy, even if there are certain people that and this is men and women, even when they're older, you look at them and go, I would never, ever mess with that person. Especially because there's a certain kind of person that even if when they lose vitality physically, they still have that air about them of, and I'm quoting Don Herrera here saying, if you fight me, you better kill me. Because it's that kind of thing where it's like, this isn't worth it. This guy's out of his mind.
Well, and this era where like the most intimidating physical this is him playing chess with Kubrick. Holy shit! David just put up the photo.
A photo of Kubrick, Hayden, and Nick Quarani playing chess.
Oh, beautiful.
And he's wearing like a short sleeve white button down shirt. Like he looks like an office drone.
Yeah. Oh my God.
It's incredible. Another thing I love about this guy, his name was Kola Quarani, but his wrestling nickname was Nick the Wrestler.
Nick the Wrestler.
Does right on the tin,
Wow, man,
Nick the Wrestler.
Boy, the writer's room on that nickname, that must have gone hours. So hang on, give me some work. What does he do? He's okay. Does he have a first name? Nick. Okay, I'll get back to you in 4 hours. I'll have something for you amazing. Right now, and there's like a whiteboard with like Nick and
but they came in with Nicholas the Wrestler, and someone was like, not quite right.
Oh, no, you know what? I know exactly what happened. They wrote Nick and Wrestler on a chalkboard out in the hallway, and then during the night, this janitor, who was secretly a genius, came and he put the word "the" in between Nick and Wrestler, and they're like, oh my God, who is doing this? What? This is amazing.
Some nickname genius walks among us. Oh boy. Okay. Let me tell you a little more about the post-production on this. So they take their cut, the cut of the film, the original cut,
right,
to United Artists. One person is there, Max Youngstein, head of production. He watches it. He says, "Good job. Let's keep in touch." And they're like, well, what should we do? They say, where do we go from here? This is, Kubrick and Harris. And Max said, "What about out the door?" And Kubrick said, "Well, you have other producer filmmaker teams. Where would you rank us with all those people?" And Max said, "Not far from the bottom." So he basically watches the movie and he's like, "It appears to be a film. Good job, guys. Thank you. I will release this. I have no further notes." And they're like, "Did you like it?" And he's like, "Nah, not really." But so essentially Kubrick and Harris are like, well, they're not going to market this. Like they're just, we're doomed. This thing isn't going to get any kind of backing. And so they themselves sort of tried to market themselves as like the new UA Wonder Team. They were in like the Hollywood Reporter and Variety and Life and things like that, trying to be like, a wunderkind sort of pair that Hollywood should get excited about. But they did all that themselves. UA kind of ignored
And
them.
then didn't Kirk Douglas see this and went, "Oh, this is Paths of Glory. This is the guy I want."
That's the whole thing. It's right. They were like smart about positioning themselves that way, betting on a star is going to recognize us.
Yep.
And like there will be a studio head who recognizes what we have going on. And it was Dory Sherry at
There you
MGM
go.
and Kirk Douglas, who both were like, yeah, this makes sense.
It got like the movie got perfectly good reviews. Like it was not like badly received or anything, but it didn't make much money and UA didn't really care about it. They put it on a double bill with Bandito, the Robert Mitchum movie. But that's sort of it. I've never seen Bandito. That's
Me
a Western,
neither.
I think. Yeah, Richard Fleischer movie.
Wow.
And there's a Time magazine review from the time where they're really amped up on it and they predict that it's, quote, going to make a killing at the cash booths. And then the next line in the Wikipedia is the film recorded a loss of $130,000.
But I think
why? Because people hate puns. They hate puns.
Yes.
they do. And it was too easy a pun to make.
It was
They
too
should
right.
never have
Come on,
dared.
guys, please. With these sterling performances, this movie should make a killing.
Boo.
So
The thing that speaks to, like, I guess, like you say, obviously Kirk Douglas and et cetera, like that helps Kubrick. But I do feel like everything that Harris is saying in these recollections of them getting shat on by UA is he's saying like Kubrick knew he was good. Like this was not like demoralizing for him. He wasn't walking out of this movie being like, I fucked it up. Like I should have listened to them or whatever. Like he was like, no, this movie was good. I did a good job.
He finally made something he felt like he could totally stand behind.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And also, objectively, he could look at the other movies that were out at the time and go, this is so much fucking better than all this other
Right.
stuff. I mean, my God.
Yeah, exactly. Like what's 1950? I'm trying to think. Like that's sort of, I think that's the year Around the World in 80 Days wins Best Picture. Like,
Yeah.
it's sort of the sort of heyday of those like really overblown. The Ten Commandments is a big movie that year. The King and I, these like gigantic scale costume drama things.
Yeah, I think Danny Peary talked about how, like, late 50s to the early 60s, Hollywood was in its, like, I don't fucking know. I don't know. Like, just
get a
throwing
book,
everything. I don't know what
put
that...
people in
and
it.
then really, like,
Right,
kind of...
yeah.
It hits its wall with that... The year that, like, Medium Cool and Bonnie and Clyde come out, like, the studios are putting out, like, Paint Your Wagon. Like, no idea what anything is going on in culture or society, just out of their fucking minds. So yeah, there's that. We're entering that phase of like all the great movies from this era are these little low budget, experimental Shadows, Little Fugitive, The Killing, stuff like that people were just trying to do, interesting stuff.
Yeah, you look at Best Picture this year, and it's like you have Friendly Persuasion in there, but the other four films are Around the World in 80 Days, Giant, King and I, 10 Commandments. Like it's four just humongous
yikes.
sort of epic mega productions.
Like The King and I is a pretty, 10 Commandments. It's got, but like none of those movies are good watches really. Like they I mean, King and I is probably the closest because at least they're singing and dancing in that thing. But like Around the World in 80 Days is a slog.
Which weird is, they each have moments that would become what people wanted to see later, but they're stuck in the middle of these giant films. So in the middle of Giant, you have James Dean doing really cool, experimental acting stuff. In the 10 Commandments, the movie's goddamn ridiculous, but there are some sequences that are fucking so hallucinatory and psychedelic.
Right. Yeah.
But before they knew what psychedelic was, when the that green fog comes in to kill, you know, and yeah, King and I has the singing, and then Around the World in 80 Days. I mean, I'm sorry that I tried watching that movie a few months ago, and it's all it is just, hey, look at this, like the scene with Sinatra in the Frontier Bar where he's supposed to go, hey, that's Frank Sinatra. Like,
right, he's like playing the piano or whatever.
Who gives
sure,
a shit?
right.
Like, yeah.
Isn't like old Buster Keaton in that? Right, he shows up or whatever. Yeah.
Oh, is he there? I'm sure. Wasn't that one of those all-star casts?
Hey, like, everyone's back. Right, we're going around the world, baby. Yeah, it's
hey, we're swinging around the world, baby. Boom.
I'm looking at sort of, you know, this is the La Strada wins Best Foreign Language Film. Like, there's little things in the Oscars when you're sort of poking around, like things like James Dean. Obviously, I mean, he's already dead, you know, at this point. But you know, like there's stuff like that.
One of the weirdest and coolest Oscar wins ever happens this year.
What's that?
What?
The Red Balloon winning Best Screenplay.
Oh, the Red Balloon.
Really?
Yeah, the little 30-minute, you know, the Red Balloon, the classic, won Best Original Screenplay. Yeah.
Holy
a short,
shit.
non-dialogue film, a 35-minute short that's mostly just a boy chasing a balloon, won Best Original Screenplay.
Yeah. Over like
beat
The Lady Killers.
The Bold and the Brave, La Strada,
Wow.
The Lady Killers. It's insane.
That's the value to me of the Oscars. It's not what they get right. It's the weird moments where they award something that you do not expect them to award.
Yeah.
And also the huge misses they have are often so much more valuable to movies because that becomes part of the movie's lore. I mean, you know, Goodfellas is already a brilliant film, but part of its majesty is the fact that you show that to someone today and they go, and that clearly won Best Picture. You're like, nope. And then you go, can you name what one? And no one remembers that it was Dances with Wolves, which, by the way, is also a fine film. But how many times do people watch Dances with Wolves? Like, Goodfellas is like part of our vernacular now. It's such an amazing piece of filmmaking.
Yeah, and like if that had been Scorsese's like coronation moment, then the rest of his career is probably super different. You know, and
exactly. Yeah.
You know.
I showed. I have a couple of friends. One of the actress that I did this movie with, I Love My Dad. It was Claudia Salewski. She and her boyfriend, they're in their mid-20s. And we were having dinner with them one night, my wife and I, and they'd never seen Goodfellas. I was like, oh, come over, we'll have dinner and we'll watch it on my screening room. Watching two people in their mid-20s experience Goodfellas for the first time, which is a movie that was made before they were born, and they're like, it felt like that movie was over in 10 minutes. Like, I couldn't believe how propulsive, and there's no CGI, it's just performance and filmmaking and writing is keeping me glued to this screen. That movie it was just amazing to watch them experience it.
Was there any moment where they were like, oh, I knew that? Like, you know, like it's always fun to watch a film that has fully entered the cultural lexicon with someone who doesn't know maybe that it's coming, right? Like some line or
the How Am I Funny scene, you know, the How Am I Funny, you broke your cherry, apparently because the guy is a musician and he's heard that amongst other musicians, like, oh my God, I just signed this deal with Warner Brothers and they totally fucked me over. Oh, you broke your cherry. Like, welcome to the world. Now you know how shitty everything is. And also just the way that they used music in that film. It's all soundtrack, but it tells a story at the same time. And especially one thing that I hadn't realized was at the end when Henry is driving around and he's just out of his mind on coke and seeing helicopters, the way they cut the songs together is how you listen to music when you're coked out of your head. You're just zipping around the dial, listen to 2 seconds of this song, 8 seconds of this song, a minute of this one. Like, it's all the soundtrack design is a feat in itself that I don't think ever has been equaled ever in a film.
There's that thing that I feel like circulated around the internet a couple years ago where he sent the script to Michael Powell of Powell and Pressburger to get his thoughts before they started filming the movie. And Powell had this amazing, like, typed up cover letter that's essentially like, this script is great, but Jesus Christ, how the fuck are you going to pull this off?
Yeah.
Like, he was just like the relentlessness and this sort of like, this thing is just like a bullet train.
It is.
But like, I don't envy you trying to make this movie, but if you can pull it off, what's the last line? He says, "Dear Marty, it is a stunning script and will make a wonderful film and a priceless social document."
And he's right. And by the way, One of the first, I'm sure you guys already know this, and this will bring us back to The Killing, because we're talking about that, directors who really respect the documentary feel and the realism almost to a fault. The scene, the Maury's wig shop commercial, there's a version of that Scorsese shot, and he was like, there's something wrong. This doesn't work, because he was basing it on an actual commercial that he saw for a wig shop growing up that was made by the guy who ran the wig shop. So he tracked the guy down and had him shoot the commercial that you see in Goodfellas. That footage was shot and cut by the guy who owned that wig shop.
That's super cool.
Because with me, I won't be able to prevent myself.
It'll be too good, right?
Yeah, exactly. I want this guy, which, by the way, one of the standout moments of the movie. It's so amazing. That sequence is incredible. Yeah. And but like, Kubrick, getting back to Kubrick, which is, I will, and again, this is so weird how he got away from this. I will sacrifice something looking good and professional if I can have something more real and immediate. Getting back to that fight with Lucien Ballard. No, let's do it with a wide angle lens, make it look weird. I know how it's going to look.
It's also fascinating when you read sometimes these anecdotes that will come out about like Kubrick's favorite movies. There are those stories about like him seeing whatchamacallit, Modern Romance.
I've always wanted to make a movie
Brooks
about
movie.
jealousy. Yeah, right.
Right, and he was just like, how did you do this? Like, I need you, Albert Brooks, to give me Stanley Kubrick notes, because you've captured a thing I failed to find a way to get on camera.
To Albert's credit, Modern Romance is a genuinely brilliant film that has aged so well and is so immediate about exactly how we are now. There are moments in that movie that you just cringe watching. They're so brilliant.
Incredible movies. He had great taste, but when you hear that Kubrick was like sending letters to Steve Martin about The Jerk, which is similarly a classic, and going like, please give me notes. How did you pull this off?
Well, I will say, I don't think Stanley really understood humor. And a lot of his humor
He's most fascinated
tends
by
to be
that. Right.
that, and also because his idea of humor is very cruel. It's almost like, and I love the Coen brothers, but a lot of their humor, even though a lot of their movies has made me laugh, but when I just rewatched Raising Arizona with our daughter, and she's like, wow, they're really mean to these people. I'm like, yeah, like they are very cruel to their protagonists in their films.
I think if you're Kubrick and you're watching someone like Steve Martin or Albert Brooks, who is able to like turn that criticism on themselves, make themselves the avatar of the movie,
yes,
and then dissect that character that much, I think he's like flummoxed by that.
Right, and that was a great thing from the 70s, and it kind of held over a little bit with Gary Shandling and Ricky Gervais, which is when the true comedian, when they see what's wrong with society, they don't want to be the person pointing out what's wrong. I want to play the thing that's wrong to show you maybe how that thing got to be the way it is. And especially if you watch Albert Brooks, Martin Mull, Steve Martin, even early Richard Pryor was in Blue Collar was so good at playing what the problem was rather than the hero.
Such a fucking good performance.
Oh my God, he's so good in that.
It's really one of my favorite movies in that decade.
Yeah, that's like a heartbreaking performance.
Heartbreaking.
It sort of falls into like the Sandler Punch Drunk Love territory, where you watch that movie and you're like, I wish he did one of these every 4 years.
Yeah.
I love that he did everything else in his career, but I wish he was able to find someone like Schrader to write such a perfect dramatic role for him once every 4 or 5
years. What's so brilliant about Adam Sandler is I think he recognizes, and it's hard to articulate it because he doesn't want to be the guy pointing it out. Again, a true comedian like Sandler doesn't want to be the guy pointing out. He wants to personify it, that a lot of male energy, especially in the 21st century, is based on infantilism and rage. And there's a lot of that. It's funny, but it's also sad that these guys just want to stay little kids their whole lives. But at one point you have to be dragged into adulthood, and the best you can hope for is to do it on your own terms. And, there's in Big Daddy, there's some really beautiful, touching moments in that film. In the middle of a lot of goofiness, there's like, he's having to, you got to be an adult now, And so Punch Drunk Love is just a more direct version of that.
The scene in Big Daddy where he takes him to McDonald's to get breakfast and it's too late for breakfast and he kind of loses it in the McDonald's, right? Is not that far from like Punch Drunk Love, like from his weird little freak outs where he's too embarrassed to be in public anymore or whatever. You know, it's that scene. The McDonald's scene in Big Daddy is very wrenching for some reason. I've never forgotten that scene. There's something.
And in Punch Drunk Love, they show you kind of why he is the way he is because of his horrible sisters and the way he was raised.
Right.
They have that scene where he throws the chair through the window because you're like, oh, this guy was abused by people who thought they were just like, oh, we're just making jokes. Come on, can't you take a joke? And so there's a lot of that. I mean, he's a genius hiding under a lot of goofiness, in my opinion.
Yeah. And even Big Daddy has, it's not as deeply characterized as the sister stuff in Punch Drunk Love, but like, oh, he's got this dad looming over him who just constantly thinks he's a fucking idiot. He spent his entire life being like, my son is dumb.
Yeah.
And his entire personality has built around, no, I'm a dumb guy.
Yeah. Which you realize he created as a defense mechanism. Like if I'm already so clownish and goofy, then the other person's going to feel stupid making fun of me. Like if I'm already doing it for them, then it takes away their power.
David?
Yeah.
I hate my smartphone.
Arrgh.
I hate it. You know why?
You're chained to it.
Nope.
Why?
I think it's weak-willed.
Well, okay.
I think my smartphone is a coward.
Spineless.
I find it spineless.
Okay.
I look at my smartphone and I go, I wish I could play more complicated video games on you. I wish I wasn't a slave to this tap nonsense like Disney Emoji Blitz, who I hope will someday be a sponsor of the podcast. I wish I could play more complicated sort of button mashing games, but I don't want to do that with a touchscreen. It's almost like, David, my smartphone lacks backbone.
Yeah, well, you know what?
What?
That's because you've been holding yourself back from the ultimate gaming experience.
What?
And if you level up your game with Backbone, which is the universal gaming essential that lets you instantly play hundreds of console games on your iPhone, no console required, you're going to be in great shape.
Yeah.
I gave you one right here.
I got one right here.
You might need to take your phone out of its case. Maybe not, though.
No, I think you could. It's adjustable, so it can fit sort of whatever size model you have, and it just plugs into the lightning port.
Yep.
And immediately then you got a classic. You got a D-pad, you got an XYBA, you got a little analog joystick
It's even got shoulder triggers.
It's got gosh darn shoulder triggers.
Yes.
Here's the thing I told you that I do, and you went, that's kind of clever. Every couple of years, if I upgrade to a new iPhone model, I take the old phone, wipe it, reset it, and then just put big data games on there.
Right. Just
so
use that
way,
as a gaming phone.
Exactly.
Yeah. Look.
No service on it anymore. I just make it like a Wi-Fi enabled little gaming thing, and that's what I'm going to do. When I upgrade this phone, I'm going to slap this old boy, into my backbone and play away.
You can play, Grand Theft Auto, Madden, Spider-Man. I play a lot of retro games. I was playing Crazy Taxi.
That's what you said you've been playing with a little bit of a wry smile.
Yeah, I was having fun.
Yeah.
You can stream games through cloud gaming services.
A lot
like
of the
Game
Lego
Pass
games are available on the Apple Store for very cheap.
Right. You can play games you own with Remote Play or the Steam Link app if you've got a PC or a PlayStation or an Xbox or something.
This is a great little product. I was excited when I saw they were going to sponsor the show, and I couldn't wait to get my hands on one.
For Diablo fans, Backbone is now the official partner of Diablo Immortal. So not only is the game specifically optimized for Backbone, but you will also receive $10 of in-game perks.
Hey.
This is in addition to everything else Backbone is currently offering our listeners: free access to over 350 console games, free subscriptions to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, Apple Arcade, and Google Stadia Pro. But this is only for a limited time. When you go to our link, playbackbone.com/check. So find your next adventure at playbackbone.com/check. It's pretty good.
Pretty good.
It's not a bad deal.
Nope. Going back to something you brought up, Patton, that this movie is coming on the threshold of like, we're within 5 years of new Hollywood starting to rear its head, right? And a big part of that, and also a big part of like the Cahiers de Cinema guys in Paris and everything, is this sort of reclaiming of B movies, of genre movies, of elevating them to high art. And this movie is in this very weird position where it's like a kind of, it is like a psychologically lofty B movie. It is not trying to purport itself to be anything more serious. It's not trying to turn itself into White Heat,
Right.
into like a crime epic or anything. But it just has a little more thought, a little more resonance, a little more sort of sadness, a little more craft. And when you look at the best pictures from this year, it's like all the huge epics we cited, and then like melodramas or like Tennessee Williams adaptations or like, biopics or the biggest like
like the Lust for Life is this year, the Van Gogh movie,
Right.
Stuff like that.
Baby Doll, Friendly Persuasion, we said, Bold and the Brave.
One of Hitchcock's most bloated movies, Man Who Knew Too Much, is this year.
Written on the Wind. It's like you need someone like Kirk Douglas to recognize this guy is punching above his weight class.
Right.
And I need to put him into a genre that they'll support a little more. Kirk Douglas in a war movie is an easy enough thing to sell.
But that's an unending cycle, I think, in all of the arts. You always get the person who's young and scrappy and doing something amazing, and then they turn into the bloated one that the new version of young and scrappy has to come along. And, for every, I'm sure there was a time when Emerson, Lake and Palmer and Yes were the scrappy young rebels, going against the whatever the rock and roll was. But by the early 70s, they were these giant bloated, like, what the hell happened to us? And then you need the Ramones to come along to go, guys, 3 chords, fun.
Guys.
Remember fun? Remember how this was supposed to be fun? Remember when you had fun doing this? So that happens over and over and over again.
Well, even just think about like Kiss being like a fucking statement of opposition.
Yeah. And it was. At the time it was, and then it became this massive bloated, okay, and then you had to have someone come along and go, no, it's this actually. Again, all the young people coming up in the 80s, people like Bruce Springsteen and Prince and stuff, by the late 80s, early 90s, they'd become these bloated stadium monsters, so then Nirvana's got to come along. And it just keeps happening over and over and over again.
It's the circle of life, and I'm waiting for it to happen right now.
But I think you see a little bit of, the whole sort of elevated horror conversation, which can get really exhausting. But what comes out of it is like, there's now become a commercial model for people to make weirder films that can get wide distribution and can actually become like a topic of discourse in the general conversation, where like, David, you were even just saying, we were like looking at the box office and you were like, it's kind of crazy that Men has made like $8 million.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's sort of viewed as like a flop that people aren't very happy with.
Sure.
But you were able to release it like semi-wide and have it play at fucking malls and have people arguing about it in a way like, that's exciting.
There's fucking people who saw that movie who will think about it for 10 years. And that's true of any of these things, right? Even if like 90% of people are walking out upset or indifferent, there's even a movie like Men, which I like, but, I thought was flawed and some people don't like, whatever. But, there's just enough people who are going to see it and be like, well, there was something there that I can't stop thinking about, right? Maybe they want to make a movie one day. I don't know.
It's also weird how like right now of all the streaming services, and I have Criterion, I have Canopy, Shudder has become the place to go to see emerging filmmakers. It's ridiculous how amazing that channel, and they're financing stuff now. They're finding stuff. So some of their originals are just like, oh, that person's going to be a huge filmmaker.
I think that's a great call. Yeah.
But it's like the Corman model. There's become an ecosystem that supports interesting developing filmmakers.
Here's a little bit of money. Do whatever you want. Right. Like no real restrictions. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a movie that's on Shudder now called Anything for Jackson. One of the genuinely, not just scary, but brilliantly made, like, these guys are going to be amazing filmmakers. Here's a lunch. You go to their IMDb, they have spent the last 10 years writing the Canadian equivalent of Hallmark movies. All their other movies are like A Puppy for Christmas. And, Santa's, and I'm
looking at Love in Harmony Valley.
Yes.
Baby in a Manger.
Anything for Jackson is so disturbing and terrifying. And I've kind of become friends with them. They're like, yeah, we had our script for Anything for Jackson. We took it around and everyone's like, yeah, it's good. We can't really make it right. This is 10 years ago. But a friend of ours was like, this people, they're looking for quick and dirty. Can someone write? Can someone direct? And like, yeah, we need the money. And they fell into that world. Very profitable. They're good movie makers. And then they finally, it's the same George Romero thing of, I'm just an industrial filmmaker. I've got this idea for a zombie movie. If he had never made Night of the Living Dead, he still would have been a successful filmmaker. He had a very successful company.
Yeah.
He just happened to also be an artist in the middle of being a total professional. And same with these guys who are like, we got to pay the bills. A Puppy for Christmas pays off our bills. Well, I'll do it. No one's giving us money to make anything for Jackson. And finally, thank God they got it done. You know, it's amazing. I love stories like that.
If all you're looking to do is get a screenplay produced and have that experience and that credit, I think strategically the smartest move you could make is writing a TV Christmas romance film.
Why not?
It's just like 60 of these are going to get greenlit per country per year.
Right.
By the way, Stephen King regularly reads and recommends romance novels because he goes, romance novelists know how to tell a story and keep you moving through it. Even
hit the beats.
Just here we go. And he reads them to remind himself, wait a minute, get rid of the bloat. Let's tell the goddamn story here.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to say about The Killing before we play the box office game? The one thing I wanted to mention, of course, is the clown mask that he puts on, which, you know, Nolan obviously pays homage to in The Dark Knight.
Yes.
It looks basically the same, the clown mask. But I also do love that when he's putting on I think it's intentional. Like, he is a bit of a fool. Like, you know, it is this weird sort of double-edged thing of him putting on this scary mask, but he also kind of looks like an idiot.
The last thing I'm going to mention before I hop off, because I know this is a big controversy, and I'm still not convinced. I'm sure you all know is Rodney Dangerfield in this film? There's that big question. There's a guy during the fight sequence. You can freeze the frame. He looks like Rodney. I don't think it's Rodney. I just don't think it's Rodney Dangerfield.
You can freeze frame it, and there's a guy who's got the jaw.
Yes, and he's got the eyes.
Of
I
Rodney.
would love it to be Rodney.
Yes.
I don't think it's Rodney.
He is currently on IMDb. Yes,
I don't think it's him. And I want it to be him.
It does kind of look like him.
I mean, it's listed on IMDb, which is obviously like user submitted and edited, right? As onlooker, uncredited.
Yes.
His first official credit isn't until 1968, which is 12 years after this.
Yes, again, I don't think. I mean, look, Groucho Marx is listed as being in The Candidate, and he's not in The Candidate. There's a guy at a barbecue that looks like him, and it's not him. And they put him on IMDb, and it's so not him.
Right.
Okay, box office game.
And just one final thought. I just wanted to say, I think I would have been able to pull this off.
Oh,
That's
yeah, of course.
Just my last thought.
You would have done it.
Yeah.
In and out.
I think I would have been able to do it.
Just
know?
a little gaffer tape on the suitcase. Yeah, and you're fine.
Exactly.
That's all it
Gotta
needed.
have tape on you.
Pat, when we covered Sam Raimi's A Simple Plan on this movie, Ben texted us and he said, if I had been in this movie, everything would have worked out and the movie would have ended with me living on a tropical island that I own. Anytime Ben watches a heist movie in which people fuck it up, he believes, I could have done this. I could have pulled this off.
All right.
I would have scored big.
I'm confident. I don't know.
Yeah, always.
All right, so the week this came out, we're going to guess the top 5, Griff, of the box office.
Yeah.
This movie sort of premiered nationwide in June 1956. Premiered in New York a little earlier, but we're doing nation. Number 1 at the box office is probably the best movie in 1956. Maybe. It's a Western.
The best movie.
It's kind of a masterpiece of the genre.
The Searchers.
It's The Searchers.
Oh,
bingo.
Well done.
Wow.
You might beat me at this one, Patton.
Number 2 of the box office, Griff, is not a movie I've seen. It's a George Cukor movie starring Ava Gardner.
Okay.
Based on a novel, big movie, I think, kind of a hit. There's no way you're going to know this. Stuart Granger is in it.
Is it based on anything? Is it?
It's a novel. It's based on a novel.
The Contessa.
No, you're kind of the right territory. It's set in India. It's a big like Anglo-Indian epic.
Came the
Ava
Rains?
Gardner looks great. No,
Does it have Rains in the title?
No, it's a location. It's a junction, in fact. All right, the movie is called Bhawani Junction. Has anyone heard of Bhawani Junction?
Wow. Nope.
No.
Absolutely
Me neither.
not.
I don't know. Ava Gardner looks good on the poster.
Can I just circle back just for a moment? It's funny to think about The Searchers feels like one of those movies where you're like, oh, when it came out, critics hated it and it flopped. And
Right,
it was
that's
reclaimed
sort of
later
its
through this
thing.
modern prism.
Right.
To think of it playing as like this fat titty blockbuster.
Yeah.
It was a big hit.
And like it was a big hit, and it like had like a Dell Comics tie-in. Like kids were fucking buying
Wow.
the comic adaptation of The Searchers, this movie about loneliness.
The Searchers rules. Okay, number 3. I mentioned it already. It's a Hitchcock movie. I really think it's one of his worst movies. It's an iconic movie.
Man Who Knew Too Much.
Yeah, Man Who Knew Too Much. It's a
Yeah.
remake, obviously. It's got K. Sarah.
Oh
Sarah
God,
in
that
it.
whole scene at the end when they're singing the song. That's oh my
Yeah.
God. I hate that scene so much.
And like Patton, what you were saying about stripping it down, it's like he's gonna do Vertigo and Psycho, and like he's.
Yeah.
I feel like at the apotheosis of a sort of like movie star Hollywood shit that he's gonna stop doing right after.
Sometimes you
this.
have to
Yeah.
feel the bloat a little bit to go, okay, wait a second, strip all this shit down. This is ridiculous. Yeah.
So yeah, not an amazing movie. Number 4, it's new this week, is a documentary film in which a guy is filming the 7 Wonders of the World. Guess what it's called?
The 7 Wonders of the World?
That's right. I have never heard of this movie. Why would people do this? It's a 2-hour movie. It's just a guy like the pyramids. I don't know. Like he's just going around.
You know what? Back then, it was a fucking novelty. It wasn't easy to travel. So like a guy made a movie where he went and took pictures of them. I'll go look at those pictures.
And people still couldn't get over movie cameras. Like the idea that it's like
Everest,
you're gonna watch moving
drink it
pictures.
in.
There was a period when they started doing the Blu-ray releases of like the Disney classics in the late 2000s or whatever. They also started restoring all these like Disney nature documentary shorts, and some of them were just like a river.
Yeah.
And you'd watch it, and it was just 15 minutes of river photography with like dramatic underscoring. And you're like, why would anyone watch this? And then 2 minutes later, you are captivated, just absolutely transfixed.
Weird.
Number 5 at the box office is a musical. I would say not a great movie. It's a movie that is sort of a part of what we were talking about, the sort of like very, very bloated Hollywood big budget picture of the time,
and sort of the stuff that Fosse was rebelling against.
I mean, it's a wonderful musical.
Yeah.
I have no beef with it. It's not a particularly good movie.
I don't know my musicals. What is it?
It is Oklahoma. With
that's a great musical.
It's a wonderful musical, and
Yeah.
it's one of those things where when I was a kid, I loved Oklahoma the musical. So I was like, "Can I see the movie?" My mom was like, "Sure," and she put it on, and she was like, "It kind of sucks. I'm sorry. Like it's too bad." The only thing that's good in it is Rod Steiger plays the villain, and he rules. He's really good.
Yeah.
That's good casting.
But everything
I
else,
feel like no one ever talks about that movie.
No, it's one of those it's a Fred Zinnemann movie. It's a very staid, nice looking, straightforward adaptation of Oklahoma that just doesn't
Gloria
have a lot of life.
Graham, Eddie Albert.
Yeah, Gloria
Shirley
Graham.
Jones, James Whitmore. It's got good people.
Obviously. But Gloria Graham is like Adu Annie, like the Shirley Jones and Gordon McRae are the stars. Yeah. So that's the box office in 1956. I love an old box office game. Yeah, you've also got the Lady Killers in there. You got
Nice.
The Man in the Gray Flannel Suit. You got some good movies.
Well, gentlemen, this was delightful. I do have to hop off.
No, Patton, thank you
But
so
before
much for doing this.
tell us about your movie. Just it's available right now.
At the time this episode comes out, yes, it'll be available digitally and hopefully also still playing in theaters in some places.
Yes, my movie is called I Love My Dad, and it's written, directed, and co-starring a young filmmaker. Took a chance on a young filmmaker, James Morosini. Just an incredible talent. And basically it's about a real thing that happened to him in real life. He had kind of disowned his dad and blocked him on all social media. So his dad created a fake Facebook profile of a hot girl to catfish him so he could stay in touch with him. But he ended up falling in love with the girl. And it is a hilarious, dark cringe fest. You will absolutely love it. It's streaming now on Apple TV. It's still in some theaters.
Definitely.
I really, really think you'll like it.
I'm very excited to see it.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on the show, Patton.
Oh, guys, thank you so much. Thanks for having me on. Down the road, in the future, there's some other big movie you want to do a deep dive on. I'm happy to do it again. This was great.
Oh,
Okay.
absolutely.
Yeah. You got
yes.
it.
No, you've been a dream guest for so long. If any of our listeners have not read Silver Screen Fiend, it is clear that you're the same sort of compulsive, obsessive thinker about all of these movies and watcher. Addict.
Yes, let's just say
that
addict. Come on, why? Don't dibble dabble, addict.
No, but that book is about you kind of finding a healthy relationship to movies after years of true crippling addiction.
Yeah, crippling is the right word. Oh my God.
Yes.
Wow. Thanks, guys.
But you've always been a dream guest because of exactly what happened, which is what I always imagined would happen if you came on the show, is all these sudden jags of all three of us going, that reminds me of this movie. Do you remember this thing in that person's career?
That's what I love the most about this kind of stuff. I love it. I love those weird, the weird connections.
Best shit in the world. We will bug you to come on again sometime.
Let me leave you guys with one more Timothy Carey story that someone told me.
Please.
Okay.
Please.
Timothy Carey was originally cast on Laverne and Shirley as Squiggy's dad.
What?
He was going to play Squiggy's dad.
Oh boy.
But he got fired.
Sure.
The first day I was having lunch with Michael McKean. I go, why did you fire Timothy Carey? He's like, we didn't want to fire him. We wanted Timothy Carey so badly, but he would not stop farting. His whole thing was
like on command?
Just not even. He's like, his whole philosophy was the minute you have to fart, you should immediately fart, like for your health. Like he was all about that.
Never hold it in.
Really. So he would sit there and goes, what's the policy on breaking wind here? And then people are like, well, we get too late. And he would just kind of go like this. And they're like, okay. And then after the first day, I think like Penny and David Lander they were like, we got to get rid of this guy. He's out of his fucking mind. And they wanted him so badly. But another actor came in to play Squiggy. But originally he was cast to play Squiggy's dad, and he got fired for farting.
That is incredible. And now a new aspiration for my own career. That's the limit I want to test.
Fired.
Yeah.
Fart whenever when you feel it. If you feel it, fart it. Don't hesitate.
That's gonna be my new like Brando-esque test for directors I'm working with.
If you feel it, fart it.
Yeah. Thank you so much again for
Guys,
being on the
thank
show.
you.
Everyone check out I Love My Dad. And thank you all for listening. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. Thank you to Marie Barty for our social media, helping put the show together. Leigh Montgomery, The Great American Novel, for our theme song. AJ McKeon and Alex Barron for our editing. Joe Bow and Pat Reynolds for our artwork. You can go to blankcheckpod.com for links to some real nerdy shit, including our Patreon page, Blank Check Special Features, where we do franchise commentaries. And I think at this point we've finished up Batman and we're moving on to the Roger Moore Bonds.
That's right. Ooh. Yep, having fun.
So look for that, including what I'll just tease is, I think, a very exciting Kubrick-themed plan we have for Talking the Walk later this year. And as always, I still cannot believe that David jumped on Patton's telling of the Bronson Pinchot joke.
I'm sorry.
I violently refuse any apology for that.
All right, fine. I'm proud of myself.